Can we all settle down, please? The guys in the left, can you please settle? All right. So, welcome all. I think it's a power pack day 2. I think we heard a lot on digital transformation on day 1. And as enterprises continue to grow and thrive, it's evident that, you know, the growth in that area is very important to stay competitive in the market. I think that's where the telcos, the service providers have a very important role to play in terms of a connectivity infrastructure and digital offerings. To take this discussion forward, you know, we would like to have this discussion, which is telcos tryst with enterprise digital transformation. Hi, I'm Yogesh Sharma, a moderator for this session. Quickly, I want to introduce the esteemed panelist. We have Mr. Ganesh Lakshmi Narayan, the CEO, Airtel Business. He has more than 30 years of experience and leads the company's business operations strategies in the Indian market. Please, Mr. Ganesh, welcome. The next in line, we have Mr. Marshall. He's a Vice President and General Manager of India and South Asia, having more than 35 years of experience and responsible for driving open source solution in the region. A very warm welcome to Mr. Marshall, please. We have Ms. Matangi Sandilya. She's a Managing Director and Technology Lead in the CMT sector. She specializes in cloud-first networks with more than 20 years of experience. Welcome, Matangi, on the stage, please. And then we have Mr. Ajay Nijavan, the Director and Head of Cloud Communications at Intel India. With more than 20 years of experience, he is responsible in guiding companies' effort in cloud and communication technologies, contributing Intel's presence in these domains. Welcome, Mr. Ajay. I think to start with, I think a question to Mr. Ganesh. You know, it's evident that all the enterprises needs digital transformation, and telcos have a key role in that. How do you see the role of telcos in the opportunities around this, and how do you see the role of telcos to expand the digital transformation?
Yeah. Good afternoon, everybody. Can you hear me? Switch it on?
Yes, I can hear you at least.
Two. That's what telcos do. We give you one line and we expect another line as bandwidth backup.
That's a redundancy.
It's redundancy. Huh? Sir, the way it goes, there will be only two. I have to hope that one of them work. Thank you. So, telco's role in enterprise digital transformation. The way we look at it for a long time, Airtel and telcos like Airtel have been thought of as a pipe provider. And only when you remember when your pipe goes down, you'll remember a telecom. I think what the unique advantage we have, and most telcos have across the world, is that we have a direct relationship with every single customer, B2B customer in India. If I speak for Airtel myself, we have from very small store, retail, to mid-tier companies, to enterprise, all the way to global. We have our own sales force interacting with these telcos. And if you look at what's going on in the country today, during COVID, we all order shoes online, we order pizzas online, we order our medicine online, and we knew exactly where those were every second, every minute, but we didn't know where our oxygen cylinders were. So the way we look at this from Airtel is the 4G was a platform which digitized the front of India, right? So but the supply chain, the factories have not been fully digitized yet. And we are hoping that the 5G will digitize the back end of India. So our investments in Airtel is going into helping companies digitize the supply chain and logistics. And hopefully that will help us, God forbid, if there is another situation like this, we will know where our oxygen cylinders were. So that's where our digital investments are going.
I think I must agree to a fact the pipe became a lifeline during COVID, and that's how it is expanding day by day. Taking this thought forward, to Marshall. So I think Marshall, we all know the way enterprises are shaping up. They look at digital transformation in some form and shape with different facets. And they look at open source solution is the key. And it will also drive the innovation. What are your views? And do you think it's going to be a mainstream in coming days?
So first of all, I think I would like to appreciate what Ganesh and team did for digital transformation. I'll talk a little bit about digital transformation and then come to your question. So first of all, I think digital transformation was always on the agenda of CIOs. And we have been talking to them for a long time. But pandemic was a big change agent. While this was a huge challenge for the world, I think overnight things change. And if you really look at what has happened post pandemic, things have changed. So, a couple of things. One thing, first thing first, is overnight we had to transact business from home without doing anything. People just didn't get out of it. All the applications had to turn into uh, mobile, available on smartphones. There were many things that we did. For telcos, for example, typically what people do is go to offices, business district, and consume bandwidth. Now, many homes became corporates consuming bandwidth, right? And so I think today what I see is uh, many of our enterprise customers have become tech companies. They are building software factories. It is all about building smart application and getting them faster. So I'll talk about few verticals where we have seen a huge part, and then I'll come to how open source has played into it. So look at banking. You look at, front office, back office, mid office, and look at the transformation that has happened in the banking. UPI, that was a big thing. I mean, today I don't have to talk about the volume of UPI transaction. I can buy a newspaper. I can go to a vegetable vendor and transact business. Look at how it is scaled. Look at digital currency. That's another big transformation. You look at, yesterday we spoke about the IT stack that India has built. And I mean, there are many innovative applications which have been built. Uh, from our perspective, I think we power all this transformation by a couple of things. We as Red Hat, we have mission critical platforms that we have built. It is all about bringing new application faster. And what we do is we power the hybrid cloud, and that is done in an open source way. So I mean, we have an application development platform, we have an automation platform, and basically the intention is you give that freedom and choice and bring that open source innovation, which happens. So as Red Hat, we work with upstream community and then work downstream with the customer and make sure that that innovation, that innovation which comes actually goes to the enterprises and government, right? Eventually, the IT has been built based on what was available at that point in time. Okay, but today it is powered by open source. You see all the new things that is happening in India or the stack that we have built or generative AI, all that is fueled by open source. So one thing I can say for sure that going forward, a lot of innovation will come from open source. And the reason for that is there are millions of developers who are working, trying to solve these big problems. And so they will continuously innovate. And it's not just about technology. It's about collaborating. It is about building application in a smart way. And it's also as much as technology, also as a culture.
Sure. And how do you see the uptake which is happening for the open source kind of a platforms in the systems, if I may ask?
It is huge. I mean, you see all the technologies. I mean, you look at vaccine control, COVID management, all the applications which came overnight, most of them were on open source. You look at generative AI. I spoke about all the applications which are powering UPI or the mission critical platform that government of India has built, all through open source. So there's a huge uptake.
Sure, thank you. I think I just noted a power enterprise transformation that goes to Matangi now. So we talked about front, middle, and the back office integrations which are happening. But is it too simple to integrate all this? Because enterprises have their inherent challenges. They've never thought of a COVID era, and now they're facing some challenges to the transformation. How do you think the challenges, maybe they're coping up with existing business processes? And what do you think is the best way to move forward?
Great question, Yogesh. I mean, I think there's nobody who does not want to transform, right? And also get on into this whole digital transformation journey. But there are a number of challenges that they're facing, starting from incumbent legacy application system landscapes, the business processes that are currently running, which are probably tuned to what was the old ways of working. The mindset shift that Marshall just spoke about in terms of even the employee base and the skill set and capacity that's available, and this huge pace of technology change that's happening all around. All of this put together, it's an elephant in the room, and we have to acknowledge that there is an elephant in the room, and it cannot be eaten in one shot. So it definitely requires the surgical precision in how you want to do this exercise, and it also should be aligned with what your priority is at that point in time, because I don't think anybody has the wherewithal to invest in all of this at one shot. Having said that, in a particular space, it's always good to look at it from an overall total enterprise reinvention outlook. I mean, I'm going back to what Ganesh just said. It's not just the front end that needs to be digitized, it's also the back end, and how the whole thing then comes to life with a strategy which needs to be it's probably a constant evolution of that strategy as well as execution of that. So it's not just the strategy, but also how you execute it. So to your question, how do you go about it? I mean, number one, acknowledge where you are in that journey, in terms of understanding your challenges and looking at it in a digestible portion, but still look at it holistically, because you're looking at this as your total enterprise and not just one domain or one particular unit.
And Matangi, you just meant we have to all push elephant in the room. What do you think? Strategy is the bigger problem, or it's the implementation side?
I think it's the combination that's what will make this work, right? I mean, you can come up with a great strategy, but if you cannot execute it, then I mean the strategy is good on paper. What next? But at the same time, if you start jumping into the execution and start looking at it in that myopic view, then you may not necessarily look at what could be opportunities that you can leverage beyond that point. So it's a combination, and it isn't strategy one time and then an execution subsequently, but it's strategy, but evolving strategy that you can quickly validate, turn around, and not necessarily be bogged down by what was past precedents.
Thank you. That goes to Mr. Ajay. I think we spoke on incumbents. I think the startups and the new players who are coming in. How do you think the readiness of our ecosystem? Because for an enterprise to undergo a digital transformation, you need an ecosystem. You need a push from the silicon providers. You need support from the software developers, software platforms, and then the SI partners. Do you think we have an ecosystem which is well flourished now to make this happen?
See, first of all, I think, thank you for having me here. And yeah, I think if we're talking about digital transformation in enterprises, it's a very big ecosystem. There are lots of parts in the puzzle which need to be, put together to really make it work. Right from silicon provider to an app developer to a telecom operator to a system integrator. And first of all, I would say, having a right problem which you can go and solve together. So, I think the pieces are of the mix are far too many, and it is going to take time to really get everything integrated together and work in a perfect way, but things are falling in place.
And do you think the ecosystem is ready, or it is going to take some time before we vouch on this journey for an end-to-end implementation?
So ecosystem, I think is ready, but yeah, we got to really have the right problems and the right economy. Those are the kind of issues which got to be tackled. But yeah, ecosystem, different players are definitely ready with different parts, and there are people already putting everything together as well. So I think that part is kind of taken care of.
That's a very good thought, Ajay. I'll come back to Ganesh again on that point. So I think the ecosystem is there to a large extent. The intent is there, but what enterprises are looking for, I think three C's, maybe the channel, content, and the communication. And telcos themselves are undergoing the digital transformation in some way. How do you look at these changes which telcos are having themselves and the way they're transforming the enterprises? How do you think this level of collaboration is happening?
So I think telcos have long been selling point products. If you come to a telco salesperson, we will sell you an MPLS, we will sell you an internet, we will sell you an SMS, WhatsApp, we will sell you PRI lines. I think we all been trained to sell that way, and we've been extremely um, fortunate to have demand coming that way. But now it's changing. I think the companies are looking for solutions. So let me bring this to life. In 3 years in this country, there will be 250 million smart meters. Every one of your meters will go digital. And when you look at it or what it takes for a smart meter to work, you need the channel, which is the communication channel, what you mentioned. You need the infra, right? And you need an application to capture it and send it out. And you need analytics on top of it to make sense out of all of this, right? If telco was last 2-3 years ago, we would have been very happy to sell you the SIM card, and it is a very profitable, simple business. But now we are thinking about it differently, right? So we are bringing a full integrated meter management, which has got its own cloud, it's got its own application, it's got communication which can work on everything NB-IoT, RF, and really trying to bring this as a one solution. And the only thing you will need is implementation. Even there, we're trying to implement a meter the same way we will implement a router in your home. So we have a nationwide workforce. So I think the way for us is to think away from selling point products or solutions. And I'll give you a BFSI example. So if you're talking to a bank, we were very happy selling you mobility, we will sell you branch connectivity, all that. Now what banks need is every one of them is trying to go up the value chain. They are trying to serve their premium customers. They have all these relationship managers. I'm sure you all have relationship managers. Now the requirement for a relationship manager is that they need a phone number which you can communicate with them, whether it is India, outside. They can also communicate with you on WhatsApp. All of this is captured so that when the relationship manager leaves, the customers don't leave with them. Now we are bringing a solution like this to a bank so that this is an integrated solution across multiple channels. It is secure, it's telco grade, it's scalable. What we would have been happy selling, just the connectivity, we are now translating this into all the three things you talked about. It's a journey for all of us. It's good that the enterprise customers are looking to telcos to solve some of these problems. They're realizing that telcos have the security and the scale to solve some of these problems. And that's going to open up a lot of opportunities for us.
Maybe Ganesh, just a point. We keep on saying with IoT and 5G, it is going to bring in telco plus plus capabilities. And that's what we needed for enterprise transformation. How true is that? Maybe that's a point we are discussing everywhere.
I mean, everybody has 5G phones. Everybody has 5G phones. Yeah. Everybody's bill hasn't changed. You're paying the same amount. So that means we all have to make money from B2B, and that's the reality. And if you come to Airtel booth, and please come, you will only see B2B, you won't see B2C use cases, right? So IoT is real. There is money to be made in IoT. There is enough use cases. You guys see it. You have your electric vehicles running, connected cars. You will have smart meters. All these sound boxes you pay, Paytm, 10 rupees has been paid on Paytm, Bharat Pay. All of that runs on our IoT devices. It looks very simple use case, but it makes a lot of money for our customers like Paytm and Bharat Pay or Phone Pay, and which is good for us as well. So I think IoT is real. I don't know whether 5G is real yet. I really look forward to people like Ajay and our friend Matangi to bring solutions. I think 5G private network, we are trying. the ecosystem is developing. The devices have to come on board. Use cases have to come on board. The back end of India getting digitized is going to be done on the 5G private network. I am very confident in 2 to 3 years. I think this will be a good thing.
Okay, thank you. That goes to Marshall now. I think we touch base on the IoT. Now we're all hearing that if we give an intelligence to the customer endpoints, it make more sense for the enterprises to transform because customer experience is a key thing. How do you look at edge computing gaining the prominence? Because getting the intelligence to the edge node points looks very important because that drives the enterprise revolution for the enterprises. How do you think the relevance and how can we do that?
So, yes, I mean, this is in some sense, extension of what you asked, Ganesh, right? This is about how do you improve customer service? How do you empower end customer? How do you take decision closer to the customer or closer to the user? And that's where the need for edge emerges. I think I earlier spoke about hybrid cloud. And hybrid cloud, in a way, is extending from core, I mean, private cloud to public cloud to edge, really. I think there are more and more edge use cases which are evolving. So there's a device edge, right, which is coming. There's a provider edge for Ganesh and team who are into this business. I mean, they have a huge footprint across the country. And the compute needs of those customers, the remote offices, the remote branches, the remote factories, where there are huge latency needs, right, can be made by them. There are infrastructure bottlenecks. And that also needs a lot of innovation. How do you build a small factor server? How do we kind of have a small factor Kubernetes platform or OS? That becomes very, very important, right? So today, from a technology perspective, I think the business impact of it is very clearly decision making, empowerment, cost reduction, because the data need not flow all the way, right? The decision can happen there. Also from a security perspective. So there is a compelling use case for edge computing, as I see, and it should only grow. The challenge we have is, and we were just talking about before we came here, as to the use cases. IoT is very clearly Industry 4.0 is a use case. There are many use cases in healthcare, etc., and they are evolving. I think you earlier asked a question on ecosystem to him, right? And ecosystem plays a very important role. So one is getting that infrastructure, software available, the getting application available, but getting use cases. And what I'm particularly enthused about, I think I attended 3 or 4 events in last few months. We did our own ISV event to get more application onboarded. I think they are doing some amazing work, and in terms of the startup ecosystem. And I guess they are really trying to solve business problem, and that will lead to a lot of use cases, which will increase the demand for edge.
Okay, sure. So going back to Matangi. So Matangi, just a recap, yesterday our Honorable Prime Minister did speak on digital infrastructure, rollout to reach out, and the tech innovation. How do you think or how do you envisage the future of digital enterprises? If we say the digital is going to be the one word that is going to define enterprises, how do you think the future of enterprises? And what are the key things that we need to keep in mind from maybe the stack players or the ecosystem providers to keep in mind to make it happen?
I think the possibilities are enormous, not just because technology is advanced so much, but also because the intent is right there right now that it's also almost become a burning platform that if you don't act on it, there is clear possibilities of being disrupted. So with all of this coming together, the possibilities are truly immense. And I think the fact that there is also some very definitive regulatory actions happening is also a great sign in the whole ecosystem. Having said that, I mean, if I just go back to the analogy of just technology, just to ground this whole concept a little bit more, I would say the future digital enterprise is going to be centered around data. there isn't really going to be a set of applications and how you can interact with applications, but it's really about data and how data can then define and decide what the next action should be. It's not just about insights, but it's about moving from I mean, I think we've moved beyond applications and just core infrastructure to platforms to now really talking and centering everything around data. Not just because of the opportunities with Gen AI, but even otherwise, the realization that data in its true format could really change the way we look at possibilities within the enterprise and outside, and how you can define your ecosystem partnerships also subsequently is really what's going to change the way we look at it. So in my mind, the pivot will be on data, and as long as enterprises acknowledge this and work towards building the right ecosystem that pushes up the foremost positioning that you have on data, I think the digitalization would be much simpler to achieve.
Thank you. I think there's a traction from a regulatory you mentioned, and obviously from the ecosystem players. How do you see the intent from the enterprises? Because we always talk about business case and ROI. How do you look at this to shape up? Because it's a cost sensitive market. And they're also looking at how they're going to make money with this digital transformation.
Yeah, and totally right. I mean, I think the starting point is of course a cost takeout, but it doesn't stop with the cost takeout. Can I take out cost, but can I invest it in a self-sustaining model that can then allow me to go towards the next growth path? Is really what enterprises are truly thinking about right now, and that's really the pivot in the intent as well. So it starts with cost, no doubt, but it quickly translates into, do I have the appetite to test and explore on newer business value streams? And can I do this in quick and smaller scale so that I can validate and move on into the next space?
Sure.
I think that's the critical element here.
Sure, thanks. Over to Ajay. I think we did talk about how enterprise look at from a business case perspective. At the same time, there are certain sectors which are coming up with the use cases. How do you think the infrastructure importance? Because we all talk about the availability of digital infrastructure. What are the key use cases that are coming with a game changer kind of environment for the enterprises? And how do you look at the implementation on a larger scale?
Okay, so first of all, I'll just like to add a bit more to what Madangi just now said about the enterprise intent. I think this is something which is inevitable. It's the competition, which is going to really put pressure. And I don't know whether some of you guys saw, there was an article just 2 days back on Siemens Galva factory. In Economic Times, it was a big article, and it said that was a 50-year-old company, and the company was just dying. So they went through this digital transformation, and they improved their processes. They make the company flexible. Earlier, they were doing maybe some number of SKUs and being manufactured in that factory. They have multiplied by that multiple times. They have reduced their process time significantly, and the company is now profitable. So, I think these kind of situations you would really see in, I would say if people don't really act or companies don't act, there would be competition which would really change the game for them, and they will have to take that path one day or other if they have to really survive. So yeah, coming to, I would say, the infrastructure part, so I would say, the use cases that you talk about, the 5G use cases, the IoT, AI, LLM, Industry 4.0, digital transformation, all of them are, dependent on infrastructure. And, I would say the infrastructure is just not space and power. It's actually, I would say intelligent infrastructure. And, because every digital need of every different company is really different. You really need a different mix. And, the infrastructure today is actually just not the servers or compute or storage, it's also the spectrum, which the operators bring in, the technology, the communication technology which you have, whether it is 4G or 5G. So all this mix has an impact on the infrastructure, and that's where you really end up with a kind of an intelligent infrastructure. So this, I would say, is one part, and for this intelligent infrastructure and heterogeneous infrastructure, you really need the entire thing to be orchestrated well together. So, and in terms of use cases, obviously, there are so many industries, wherein these use cases are being tried. In industry, you have use cases like defect detection, being used in car industry for paint defect detection, or in electronic manufacturing to see the PCB quality monitoring, or you're looking at use cases like construction safety or worker safety, or in retail. I think Ganesh just not talked about an example, but there are many more. You can have AI personalized experiences for customers, or you can even have promos personalized for customers. Healthcare, again, there are lots of use cases, be it the remote monitoring of the patient, or using AI scans to detect diseases way early, before they can hit any patient. So these are some of the things, some of the use cases which are kind of gaining traction for now.
Sure, thank you. I think I'll come back to Ganesh again for concluding 1 minute kind of a message. He spoke on the lot of B2B use cases. How do you think, in terms of a maturity, are we still there, or we need few years to actually work on the advanced use cases?
Yeah. I mean, we all, as a telco, we all hope this maturity comes very soon because we need to see some money. But if you look back at 4G, right? We built the 4G, and all the use cases came very, very quickly, and COVID accelerated some of it. I think the maturity is not there yet in terms of 5G, but we are very confident that will come. I see maturity coming in a couple of dimensions. One, there needs to be a maturity from a telco side to put up a private network more efficiently, make it easily affordable by the factories, ability to make sure that the existing brownfield plans can talk to the 5G private network. So that's on us. I think that's the first maturity a telco should bring. Second is the maturity we are expecting all the device ecosystems to bring, right? Today, they've all been very happy to sell to telcos. Now they have to help me sell to enterprises like, manufacturing plants and mines, which means they need to bring up with end devices which can connect and connect to 5G. That's the second level of maturity we are looking for. Third is the compute maturity, right? Both Red Hat and Intel are here. We will need very ruggedized, affordable edge compute infrastructure to capture all the data, the drones, the vehicles, the smart meters are going to throw up. Now, the existing centralized server storage, cloud, AWS systems and Azure systems or hyperscale systems may not function there. We are, from a telco side, we have the infrastructure, we have the 120 edge data centers, but we need an affordable computing to come to that stage, right? That's the third stage of maturity we're looking for. And finally, people like Accenture should make use cases a little bit more well understood, not by the CIOs alone, but from the operations guys as well, so that they see the ROI, right? So, hopefully, if all this maturity comes, telcos will make money, and you guys can continue to enjoy 5G for free. So,
Absolutely. I think Ganesh already asked a question from you, Marshall. In terms of computing, I would say how affordable can we make it? And do you really see open source is going to pave a way for cognitive AI, which is, we are saying that it's the ultimate, objective of enterprise being digitally transformed?
So, yes, certainly. A short answer is yes. It has an impact on total cost of ownership. It has it generally commoditizes the infrastructure needed. Ganesh spoke about the software form factor. We already done that on our OpenShift and Linux version, which is needed to run on edge. But while we are talking about use cases, Ganesh, India has always surprised.
absolutely.
Right. So I'm optimistic on this because as I said, the ecosystem is amazing and it is evolving at a very fast pace. The one part I think we didn't discuss on digital transformation is about talent. And that also is very, very important, right? While we have a huge talent pool available and a large supply from the university's perspective, I think how do we make it quickly deployable to the industry? How do you do the training and certification, etc.? So from our perspective, we are also playing a role, kind of some like the certifications that we do, right? Both on all the technologies that we do. We are also kind of tried to work with some state government and work with academia to kind of as a part of national skill development to get that curriculum embedded. So at an early stage, students can absorb that technology and it's made available. So I think technology is important, infrastructure is important, and I think we have built a very uh, great digital infrastructure, I would say, but skills are also important. So the balance uh, evolution of all this with open source and ecosystem will actually help us accelerate. And we have already seen the acceleration that has happened in India.
Thank you. Uh, Matangi, how do you see, maybe the top three problems enterprises are having in either of the sectors or industry, and how do you look at as a solution or a recommendation to them?
And I think we touched upon almost all of it, right? I mean, the fact that it's around not just around technology, but also around the mindset shift that's needed, the skills that are needed as well within the organization. Ganesh talked about make the solutions easily understandable. So the underlying problem there is the sales agents are not necessarily able to sell anything beyond
Just
connectivity.
putting it on sales.
Yeah.
No,
It's always the sales is the problem.
no, maybe Matangi, since you interact with a lot of enterprises, do you think they are ready for this? Because every time we're talking about ecosystem, affordability, regulatory, policy making, are enterprise really ready? Are they having the right skills to operate and
No,
maintain that?
I'm coming to that. That's exactly why I said the skills within the organization, within an enterprise needs a shift as well. And that's because we are also changing the way we are our expectations of what we expect, people in the organization to think about is also very different, right? So that's really the biggest area to target, of course. I mean, and maybe the one other topic which we haven't necessarily touched upon is because this is a large, I mean, even on this dais now, we have people representing different parts of the whole piece that needs to come together. The interoperability that's required is something that will constantly need an intervention as well. And how do we minimize this? How do we minimize this so you're not just necessarily addressing technical debt and what's built already versus moving towards what you need to think about in the future? If I have to, look at an upgrade on Kubernetes every 3 months, can I just shift from just upgrading on Kubernetes on my every single application landscape, but really move on to something else that I want to address, which is business critical, is probably what enterprises are really bogged down with, and that we all have a collective responsibility to make that interoperability seamless and to make that easier for the adoption to happen. So I think that's a collective responsibility here.
Thank you. Maybe a last question to Ajay, which Ganesh has asked already. How do you think the role of silicon players for this to happen? Affordability always been a challenge, and how fast can we make this happen?
So I would say role of silicon providers addresses some of the challenges which Matangi also talked about. So, we as silicon providers just don't provide silicon. We also work with the ecosystem a lot. And we really want to ensure that the ecosystem really gets the best possible optimized performance and are able to scale out things faster. So, so that's the capability. And we have been, I would say, collaborating just not with our ecosystem players or cloud service providers, but also with telecom operators or also with end customers to really see that everything kind of they are really getting the best out of that infrastructure. So these are the pieces which like silicon providers like us are kind of doing it for quite some time. We obviously silicon innovation is the most important one.
Yeah.
And, I'm not sure if you guys have heard, Pat Gelsinger, after taking over in 2021, he announced that in 4 years, we are going to have 5 nodes. So we are going to have really a very accelerated, I would say technology innovation, which is going to really optimize the silicon considerably, giving you throughputs of performance like 2.5 to 3 times to what you get in just about a year and a half. So that's one part of the piece. And I think other thing what we just announced at Intel Innovation last month is kind of combining all these capabilities together, and we have launched a project called Project Strata. It's a single platform which is for, I would say, telecom service providers or developers or even customers. And this single platform can help you do multiple things. It has a infra layer, the foundational layer, the infra layer, which is there. Then we have an app layer on it, and we also have an orchestration layer. So you kind of are able to roll out things much faster the moment you adopt something like this. We would work with cloud service providers, like Red Hat or any other cloud service provider. They would be a part of the overall solution. But by collaborating with them, we would come up with a with something which telecom providers can roll out very quickly in the market.
You want to say something, Marshall? I think
There's one thing I think we didn't touch upon, which is about sustainability. And I think we have a joint initiative which is about sustainability, which is all about how to optimize infrastructure. Okay, I think if you look at telco, generally it consumes around 1.5 to 2% of power, right? I mean, if you really look at it, that's the number. But the impact that it has, and compute part, how do you use the cluster? How do you optimize that? That's also a very pertinent point. And I think, Ganesh spoke about ecosystem. I think ecosystem is working and trying to collaborate to try and solve some of the very complex issues.
Thank you. I think with that, we'll close the session. Maybe before we close, would like to take a couple of questions from the audience if they have for any specific panelist. Please. Yeah.
I don't know if I'll be popular if I say this, but I will. I think the pace can be faster. That's my, I mean, no bullshit answer. But having said that, this is a complicated situation, right? I mean, it's not that simple. It's quite complex, and it's about also. I mean, think about it as four or five layers. In different geographies, there are different actions that are happening by telcos. They're thinking about moving the services layer completely out into a different organization, keeping the network as a separate organization, so that they can focus on improvements in each of these organizations differently, because the end customer expectation in each case is very different. We may not be able to do that from an integrated telco model that they're operating in every place and in every such situation. And the competition is all asset light disruptors. So it's a very, very difficult situation that they're operating in. So I do understand and probably empathize the reason why the pace is slow. But could it be faster? It can be.
The last question. Any last question?
Thank you, Martangi.
Yes, sir. Please, sir. Yeah.
So the question is that it's related to security. And I need to pick up on digital. The service to exposure is more. So should you provide services on licensed spectrum bands or unlicensed spectrum bands? That's one part maybe Dinesh.
We are in closed period and I'm not allowed that.
The other one is, how do you see the potential of the automobile sector? Because, vehicles with the network of V2X, right? And every car today is fairly digitized. So in terms of the automobile sector, how you see things?
Yeah. I think the licensed versus unlicensed, Airtel is, and most telcos have answered it. We would love it to be licensed. We have paid a lot of money for it. So hopefully, we all will use only licensed spectrum. On the connected vehicle side, I think it's a very exciting. We have about pretty much 2/3 of electric vehicles in this country run on Airtel. I think what would be interesting is that what is the use case for all of us who run vehicles to pay money beyond the second year, right? The first year, the automobile manufacturers have enough incentive to, pay for the connection because they get a lot of telemetric information from the vehicle which they could use. The second year, the insurance companies have a lot of interest to know about the details of the vehicle. But beyond that, as a consumer, why would you pay? So I'll give you a very interesting use case. I'm sure a lot of us are going to drive electric vehicles. A lot of them are going to have, swappable batteries, right? Now, if that battery, the vehicle comes with a SIM card, and that can know when the battery goes down below 80%. Imagine if that battery can call the nearest service center and somebody comes and swaps the battery without when you're sleeping. It's like somebody is charging your phone, automatically when you're sleeping, which doesn't happen. But imagine if that could happen. That could happen with a battery and a vehicle. So there's some very interesting use cases with charging stations, which we can make it work. Entertainment consumption, which is beyond the first 2 years, which there is a value in you paying for it. That's a very interesting use case. I think there is the basic platforms have been put in place. Now we really come up with these kind of use cases to make sure that there is enough money to be made around the system.
Thank you. I think we had an engaging session. Truly, India is driving a digital renaissance with technologies shaping the enterprise future. I think a big round of applause for the panelists for the session. Thank you so much, and thanks, panelists, for your time. I think, uh, yeah.
Check, check, check. 1, 2. अरे
Thank you. Thank you very much. Sir, when do you send all these?
Thank you.
Hey, firstly, I'm Anurag Avasthi. I'm Vice President of India Electronics and Semiconductor Association. I look after policy, government, corporate relations, international collaborations. Insofar as the premier body on semiconductors is concerned, I have an eclectic cast today insofar as the semiconductor ecosystem is concerned and how India is poised in the shifting sands in times to come. So to start with, we have Arnob. He's the Chief Operating Officer of Tejas Networks. He's been with Synopsys, Cadence, has a great nearly 3 decades worth experience in the semiconductor domain. Welcome, Arnob. Then we have Vivek Chabra all the way from San Diego. He's the CEO of 21 IQ Technologies Labs. And I asked him why 21. So he said 21 is to cater for the 21st century because 22nd century he may not be around. So that's a very profound answer that he gave me. Then, of course, we have Chetna Mohan to look at diversity in the semiconductor space. She's the president of Al Camino, all the way from Bangalore. Very kind of her to come today and go back the same day today. And a hearty welcome to you. Then we have Sanjay Gupta, a great career with NXP before this, and now is the CEO of Minda Spark, also chairman of IESA, a great veteran, a great thinker, and a thought leader. We look at some great, inputs from Sanjay insofar as the automotive sector is concerned. And then, of course, we have Sunny, an industry veteran with Toyota to show early, and now also our advisor to the Keynes Technologies, who are now looking at the OSAT and ATMP business in India. So since we are generally looking at that Indian stretchable time variant, because it was supposed to start at 3 o'clock and now it is 3:20. So I will just go straight away into the question answers and ask all these esteemed panelists as to what they think about various facets as to what they are and how we are poised to go from here, and then take it forward. We'll keep 5 minutes in the end, possibly in case somebody wants to ask a question, or possibly 7 minutes to ask 2 questions, and then we can take it from there. So let me start with you, Arnab. You're from Tejas Networks. Tejas Networks is a big success story in India. You all aware, and they are the future of data centers as well. When you guys started, I'm sure there were issues of the market competitiveness, the major advantage. How will it happen? Am I going to be fitting in there? So on and so forth. So how has the journey been, and how do you envisage going forward insofar as you are concerned today?
Hello. Yeah. So thanks, Anurag. Thanks for the question. So before I get that, I mean, I can't help looking at and seeing the similarity of the semiconductor industry in India, at least the domestic indigenous industry in India, and how similar it was when we decided to start Tejas. At that point of time, what we looked at, right? I mean, the opportunity was there. The telecom industry was beginning to take off at that time. And the amazing thing was so much of technology for the global multinational corporations, whether in software or hardware or systems, was actually getting designed in India. So the talent that was there available in the country was so much, right? I mean, we're all multinational companies developing products for the kind of thing. So the idea came, hey, all the talent is there. Why not make it products from India, branded from an Indian company, and go global, right? And that was the vision and the passion with which we started. The journey was tough. It's not easy, right? I mean, you're against global competition with huge R&D budgets. We started off very small funding and then kept going along the way. And a lot of times when we were actually trying to raise money, the common question was, how do you guys are even alive? Yeah, that was the question we needed to answer. But here we are. We found a way to survive and flourish and do things. And I see the exact similarity of that situation right now, and that's what I want to talk about. If I see, as a systems company, just as a background, we make telecommunications products for optical transmission, for the radio access networks, everything like the end-to-end product portfolio, right? So as a systems company, we use a lot of semiconductors, right? From all the names, whether it's Broadcom, Analog Devices, Qualcomm, everybody, right? And every time we select a product and we use them, I hear, hey, the product is actually designed in Bangalore. Okay. So a lot of the high-end products that we use, many of them are either fully or partly the teams in Bangalore or Hyderabad or other semiconductor centers they are making it. So I see the similarity. I mean, if someone wanting to do a startup thinks the same way, that the capability is there, the talent is there. Actually, not too many countries across the world can say that even if they wanted to do it, even if they had infinite amounts of money to fund, they won't have the intellectual capability, the skills that are required for making a semiconductor company, right? And we have it. We have it in abundance, right? So the two main things that we have struggled with is in Tejas, and there's a question that everybody in the semiconductor field asks about: what about funding? Is who's going to invest? And what about the end customer? What about the markets, right? So again, the same situation. I mean, there's a market is big. There's a lot of systems being sold over here. There are a lot of end customer, consumer consumption of semiconductors happening. So I don't see any difference in the obstacles that we saw at the time. So I really encourage, the industry over here to, pick up the challenge, do the same thing, and we found a way to survive and flourish, and so will the semiconductor industry do, right? I mean, that's my message for the team.
Great, great. So that's what Arnab says. It's the, Veer Bhogya Vasundhara, the earth is for the brave. And, it's the same issue of that competitiveness, market, creating demand and all of that. So let me segue quickly to, Sanjay, who's, who's the, actually a doyen in the automotive sector, as, possibly taking off from Arnab, and he says, there's that issue of creating demand. So what, in your opinion, how do you think the automobile manufacturing and the automobile market in India is the second largest market in the world today? And, people say that it is headed to around 15 lakh crores by the end of 2024. So how do you see these metrics of the automotive and semiconductors, converging in one another? And how do you intend creating demand in the system?
So thank you, Anurag, and it's a pleasure to be here. So the question is very, I would say, create a deja vu feeling with respect to 90s when we had a first time cell phone coming to India. At least we got to have those cell phones in mid 90s first time. I actually feel we are exactly at the same inflection point regarding the automotive industry, maybe little further, because the kind of questions we had at that point in time, that cell phone market is going to drive the semiconductors, high-end technology. The first cell phones did not have any cameras also, right? And every year there were innovations coming in. Every year the screen size was getting bigger. Every year there were audio and FM and all those things started coming first time. And if you look into a parallel that is happening almost 25 years, 30 years back later, when you enter into even an entry-level car, you are expecting some basic features, that it has to have the basic connectivity, it has to have the basic Bluetooth based mobile connectivity. And the more we are into, the more we are getting fascinated that it becomes the fastest growth engine. As a matter of fact, a car is today the fastest growth engine. Car is a general word, automotives. So whether it is a two-wheeler or a three-wheeler or a four-wheeler. And I happen to spend 27 years of my first job into semiconductors, and now I'm a user of semiconductors in Spark Manda. So I'm building systems that are using semiconductors. And I cannot be more fascinated the way this world is going, because every single layer of a car, if you dissect, or a two-wheeler, you have engines getting converted from traditional engines into from IC to EV, and that itself is driving such a big demand for semiconductors. Just to give you a simple example, in a EV powertrain, if you have a big battery, that is a point of debate today. It is millions of small cells connected in series and parallel. So a small coin cell that we might use in our smartwatch, there are millions of those in series and parallel as an analogy. And the trick between a good EV company and a not good EV company is how fine these cells are balanced with respect to each other in terms of their power levels. And we're talking about like microvolt and millivolt, that kind of accuracy, which is only possible by very high-end semiconductors loaded with very high-end embedded software algorithms. That is just one example. You are trying to replace human driving with the autonomous driving. That is another stream in itself, which is opening up capabilities like artificial intelligence, data analytics and machine learning, which is again driven by high-speed GPUs and graphical processing units, image processing units, just to bifurcate, whether it is a cow on the road or a human on the road, right? So that way, the entire sensing technology from human eyes and ears is getting converted into semiconductor technology like radar and cameras, to name a few. So this is the fastest growth engine. And to answer your specific question, the demand creation. While in the country we are talking about we will be the nation to reckon with as a semiconductors manufacturing nation. One reality is that the supply side, while we are catering through very progressive government schemes, and a lot of companies are now entering into the country with the start of Micron, and a lot of other companies are planning about it, I'm sure, in next few years. One question always remains how the demand will get created. And the answer lies that demand will get created by the local players. There are players like our own company and many others who will be getting huge competitive advantage if they don't need to import these chips from outside. Today, the bill of material which decides your selling price has more than 50, 60, 70% components which are imported from outside, and chips being one of the biggest ones. If we are able to localize them, it will put us right in the race as a level playing field with the big MNCs which are right now leading this whole world. And that is where the opportunity for India lies, because the talent wise, we are the one who are driving all global companies. Opportunities wise, India is a land of opportunity. The only thing is level playing field, which I believe semiconductor localization will give, and it's a true win-win. So I'm extremely hopeful for the future with that.
Wonderful, wonderful. So the key to the entire ecosystem development is firstly creating demand, aptly brought out by you very clearly. And once we look at this entire spectrum, we also see, Sunny, let me segue to you. And when you see, you also an automotive doyen of the industry, if I may add, in so many words. So when you look at the entire semiconductor ecosystem, you're looking at the issues of equipment, you are looking at issues of the supply chains, the global value chains, and you're looking at material, so to say. Right. This is the troika which basically runs the entire semiconductor industry. So how do you think the global value chains, how can India add on to these global value chains? And what do you think is the future insofar as what should you generally do? Are we taking the steps in the right direction? If so, how and why?
Thanks, Anurag. It's a very relevant question in today's time, and very few people are asking this. Most people are just focusing on setting up a fab.
Absolutely.
Right? While it is not just investing $3 billion and setting up a fab. You need an entire ecosystem around it, starting from chip design to the end market, which you covered in the earlier question.
Correct.
So fortunately, we have a large market. Everybody in the world is looking at India's marketplace. And at the other spectrum, we have a huge design team, chip design. Nearly 20% of the global chip design workforce is based out of India, which is a very major strength. So we have chip design, we have the market. The second last step is EMS, people who manufacture the PCBA. So they are also, a lot of them are there now. People like Dixon and Keynes and many others. What is missing is the fab and the packaging, ATMPs. ATMPs already Micron has announced, 2 or 3 more companies have announced, but the other important factor is that a chip typically needs more than 1,000 different chemicals and gases and various other minerals which for final production. I think you all know a typical chip crosses 27 boundaries before it becomes ready, right? Across the 27 country boundaries before it is ready for after manufacture. So we, as IES say, that is another hat I wear, where me and Sanjay and Anurag are part of the IES teams. We have worked with the Indian Chemical Association, and we are trying to get Indian chemical industry to improve their global standards to match the semiconductor need, right? They're already at, let's say, 90% of the quality requirement. But to go the final mile, go to 99.99%, which the semiconductor industry requires, they need technology, they need joint ventures, and we are all, as industry, working for that. If that happens, we can not only cater to the Indian supply chain need, but we can also cater to the global. We can become a supplier to the globe, across the world, because our costs are low. We are already a huge chemical manufacturer. We are already a huge gas manufacturer. So nitrogens and all these bulk gases are used a lot. So what I'm saying is that we need to develop that entire ecosystem from chemical supplies to gases and set up the fabs and set up the ATMPs and set up skilling. So this entire ecosystem, it is the industry associations and veterans from the industry like me who want to give back to the industry now after spending 40 years here. And one last thing I would like to add is that today is a time like we have not seen the last 30, 40 years. This is the right time for all of us to put in efforts and make, because if we lose this opportunity, I don't think another opportunity will come again. We have traditionally seen India as the Indian government, if I may say so, as a blockade to progress. There have been many jokes, many memes about this. Today, I'm saying they are the enablers and it is the industry which is holding back. Right? We are at a position like this young elephant, if you see, it is tied with very heavy chains. When it grows, it tries to break that chain. It cannot break that chain. And mentally, they decide, no, we cannot do this. When the elephant grows up, it is tied with a very thin string. It does not try to break that because mentally he has already lost. So please don't, especially the young audience, I see a lot of young audience here, don't get into that mentality. This is your time, and the government has enabled everything. And we as industry are trying to do as much as you can. But you have to take up the challenge and move ahead. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Sunny. So 27 boundaries, 3 revolutions around the earth, 150 chemicals and gases, 8% of Indian GDP into the chemical industry, just upping it up from parts per million to parts per billion. That is exactly what you need to do. But in this entire quagmire, there's very important thing which Sunny has mentioned. And on that, I will segue to Chetna, who's now looking after this aspect very, very acutely, and that is skilling. And that skilling is the Achilles heel, because this will create something called the talent deficit. This is what will create a lot of other issues in times to come. And that famous 4-decade-old Indian hangover of computer science engineering needs to go now and get into more electronics and more electrical and more microelectronics engineering to make this dream happen. So Chetna, anything on skilling?
Thank you, Anurag, for inviting me for this. And this is an interesting subject for me, skill development. As we see all youngsters here, most of them, what is skill development? So when you see it's a mismatch between the industry, what a job seeker and a job provider, right? So of course, the universities and colleges have a certain curriculum, right? But it's not matching the industry. So this is where we are trying to see that how a skill development has to be there in the industry. So India has advantage of a young population in 3 ways. We have young, largest, youngest engineers in the world, and the graduates in the world, and then also youngest, highest working population. Plus 200 million people know to speak English. And if you see, Thailand is having, a problem with getting the advanced manufacturing because of this one drawback. Although the people are good in their skills, but because of the language, so we have these advantages. But when you see at the college level, people are still not knowing. So I happen to have a few sessions with some universities. And, the word OSAT, they said, ma'am, is it a company? I said, okay. So we need to really educate people in a large way, just to make them understand what a semiconductor is, right? And apart from this, when you see the faculty has to know what it is, the curriculum has to change. And when you see a graduate, right? So we have 12 lakh engineers passing out every year. And most of them, all of them want to go to IT, right? So we have to educate them. There is a role called manufacturing engineer, right? Because India needs the manufacturing, population which goes into this. Of course, the starting, if you talk about the pay scale, IT industry at the outset of starting, of course, they pay high, but we have to tell them then if the manufacturing is a growing industry and in a long run, they would be getting much more than what the ITs are talking. And of course, we have other things added to that. The more experienced you are, and more than that, India needs this, and they would be at the ground floor of Indian renaissance of semiconductor manufacturing. Right.
Wonderful.
Yeah. So we definitely need people, young population, young graduates. And it's not just the electronics or electrical. There are so many like ecosystems. So chemical engineers, the civil engineering is connected because the clean rooms are so sophisticated, right? You need the gases, right? The electrical, the mechanical, even the software engineers are required, right? So the vast field of engineering are all connected. So if a semiconductor company comes, many of them would be getting the jobs. And it is our role to educate our engineers and our young generation to see that they are, skilled in a way that industry can just pick them up.
Wonderful. So the sub-cheese of the entire situation is that it's not only the skills that you have to put into the young graduates, it's also the faculty development, so to say. So large things in the policy domain have happened. A large number of syllabus has changed by AICTE. We are influencing a lot of things insofar as the AICTE is concerned, getting industry involved, because finally the industry has to do the required things. But at the end of the day, it is also the era of AI. Is the artificial intelligence. I mean, we've all seen how Chat GPT and all these things happen, right? Vivek, all the way from San Diego. There are AI chips now coming into the play, which are going to be the game changers insofar as the future technologies are concerned, especially critical technologies. Your comments on the AI chips, please.
Sure. Before I go on to the AI chip itself, I would like to add on to what Chetna talked about. So AI is a very overloaded term in some cases, everybody uses it, but I want to give you some color about the AI part of it, that the Chat GPT, when it came out, a lot of people in the industry started to think that now their jobs will be gone because of certain aspects of disruption, and which is partly true. Chetna talked about the number of skills or the skillful people in India going to computer science or IT side of the things rather than going to semiconductor industry, for example, electronics. And I can tell you that a basic Hello World program or the basic computer science algorithms or things will be generated by the AI moving forward. You probably won't need those kind of skills. So you need to master the skills which allows you to be able to build more artificial intelligence specific algorithms or integration aspects of it. And that requires not just the knowledge of the systems, but also the knowledge of sophisticated chipsets, how these will be formed moving forward. So in the chipset domain, there are architectures, you must have already heard. There are architectures which is ARM-based architectures. There are architectures, RISC-V-based architectures, which is open source based. And then there are architectures from x86, which is Intel and AMD. And if you look at the mobile world, which I would say every single person in this room has an ARM as an architecture sitting on the mobile handset today. It's a low power architecture. Now every chipset in company and the cores, when the cores I say ARM, RISC-V or x86, they all are integrating AI algorithms as a part of it, which can actually instantiate better LLM kind of models moving forward. And you must have heard the company called NVIDIA, which is #1, almost $1 trillion market cap right now. And that is a combination of GPUs and the ARM CPUs integrated as part of it. But don't forget, it's also the semiconductors plus the software which goes on top of it. That's a combination of those things make the AI what it does today. The next specific part of AI, which is going to be, so AI will be in every chipset, I can tell you that much. Neural networks, which is a form of algorithm aspects of putting in the basic SDK creation with using the chipset. will be in every single chipset. Companies like Qualcomm and everybody will actually talk about it. The main thing will be the next step is the AGI, which is the generative AI intelligence. And that is the combination of different architectures combined with the chipsets and the middleware and the software. So the systems are going to be very, very sophisticated moving forward. And just the third part is that don't forget just the chipset on the device itself. It's also on the edge compute parts. It's also on to the cloud parts as well, where all these three different aspects of it has to work through. And I think one of my colleague here talked about automotive. Today, if you look at every single automotive company is looking at how I can use the AI in an automotive domain, for instance.
Thanks. So I think, I hope Waymo is listening to what you just said. And insofar as their autonomous cars are being made by Google, I think they're putting in all of that, and looking at it.
I know a bit about it.
Anyway, so there is something very important beyond that. Arnab, let me come back to you, and I've been wanting to ask you truthfully, the semiconductor manufacturing, or it is design, or whichever way it is, it requires a massive amount of investment. So, what do you think are the best ways, or what are the funding mechanisms available today, which can be used to harness this potential in India? Because at the end of the day, it's all about money, right, to start, and nobody better than to ask you from Tejas.
Yeah, a very good question. So, as we all know, and a lot of the other panelists have talked about it, semiconductor design, there are multiple steps with very, very different skill sets which are involved, right? Top of the line are at the top are the design skills, the product conceptualization and design skills. And then comes the manufacturing, the actual fabs and the packaging and testing and packaging and stuff like that, right? So the front part is a very intellectual capacity dominated space.
Okay.
Right? The funding requirements not in terms of billions of dollars. Someone can start with a few $1 million. They just started with
few millions, a lot of money.
Few million, yeah, 2, 3 million, 4 million is something like that. And I believe the government is actually funding a lot of startups in the semiconductor space with that kind of money.
Right.
Okay, like a few crores kind of a thing. But it is dominated by the intellectual capacity. And now the back-end part where the semiconductor manufacturing fab and ATMP is concerned, that requires huge investments. And the big business groups in the country, they are already setting up partnerships and making the investments. I know, our company is now part of the Tata Group. The Tata Group is making a big investment over here. There are many other announcements about manufacturing. But my point is, to build a semiconductor company, semiconductor ecosystem in India, you don't need all the parts to be there, to be ready.
Right.
Just the design, the most of the large companies are fabulous design companies that we know of, right? I mean, all the big names you talked about. So if you could even design and use the manufacturing capability which is there in the rest of the world, that is a great starting point, right? When the fabs come to India and we are localizing the manufacturing, that's the next step. But these are all absolutely independent of each other, right? The fabs can be done without a design company because you could be an alternate to manufacturing of the TSMCs and the Samsungs as an alternate. But the design, similarly, the design companies, the fabulous design companies can exist even without a fab, right? So I think when you talk about the funding, coming back to the question, the answer is that the design startup, the fabulous startups can start with a smaller amount of money. That can be private funding, that could be venture funding, that could be government funding. I think this government has been very, very proactive in terms of understanding the requirement of having a semiconductor industry ecosystem and funding designers. And the back end, I already see a lot of movement happening. I think the COVID has taught us the importance of semiconductors and building a supply chain. So I see a great future over there. That's already happening. Front part is where I think people need a lot of motivation and the path forward to really make that part happen.
Wonderful. I think well brought out. Thanks for that. So at the end of the day, there's a large amount of policy traction insofar as the government space is also concerned in terms of PLI, DLI, various other schemes, and so on and so forth. So it's not as difficult as it looks to be. But moving away from design, let me segue back to Sunny. And Keynes has been in the news a lot. Sunny.
Yes.
And we are looking at post Micron. We are now looking at Keynes as well. So
We
your
will,
views on how it is going to be, progressing and what is it going to be now in times to come?
a very interesting, rise of canes
Yeah.
over the last couple of decades. This started literally out of the garage. The founder, Mr. Ramesh Kannan, was a graduate from engineering college, and he started this electronic EMS business on a very, very small scale.
Right.
And it has grown massively. They now have 7 plants in India. They had an IPO a few months ago, 10 months ago. The share price is about 4 times the issue price. The market cap is about 11,000 crores. And he is the management of Keynes, he and his wife. The wife is the chairman, Mrs. Kannan. And they are very keen to give back to India and to start something latest technology. So it's not just about getting, growing the business, but doing something which is right. So I'm an advisor to them they were large customers for me in Toyota, and they took me as an advisor for this business. So we have had a very successful engagement with the government of India. And like we're talking about funding, the government is trying to offset the advantage which overseas countries have, right? Because they've been in business last 20 years. And the depreciation alone will kill us if I spend 100% of my money to set up a ATMP, right? And ATMP business is available because globally, all the semiconductor manufacturers are keen to cater to Indian demand. And if there's a local assembly, it makes sense for them. So business should not be an issue. 50% the central government gives on pari passu basis, which means if I spend 100, government will spend 100. It's not that I spend everything and then claim back. Then each state government has also on top of this giving anywhere 20, 25%, 27%, I've heard. They give that kind of subsidy. So at the end, the corporations spend only about 25%, out of which also about 65% loans are available from banks. So it is a question of willpower and the connects. The challenges are a little different because the government of India is very keen that they do not give this to, let's say, a builder or a diamond merchant who wants to set up a fab or a ATMP. This is a true story.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
It really
a lot of builders and diamond merchants who just want that land allocation, but they want a partnership which actually makes sense. So the global partner must have a stake in this company. They must have the technology. They must contribute to the business. So finding that was the tougher challenge, and funding was not. So we've been able.
So the dichotomous view.
Typically, it was funding which used to be the problem.
Correct.
Today, meeting the government's requirement, which are very fair, I think, they're very well thought out. So getting that kind of partner, then getting the skilling. The 2 questions they've asked us is this, the skin in the game of the foreign partner and the skilling. So we have tied up with various universities in India, in US, in Europe for skilling programs. We have signed MOU with IESA also to run a skilling program, and we'll be talking to you also. And so we're trying to approach that part of it. We are working with various, of course, AMSL and all the machinery suppliers. So we're trying to bring it all together. But the support from the government has been great for the state government. And we broke ground last week in Telangana for the first plant. There'll be several more also. It's not the only one.
Great.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, Sunny. See, another success story in the making. Let me also tell you at the same, speed and same behest that firstly, I'm not, very erudite as these gentlemen are. I'm that policy guy who sits in a corner and gives some gyan at some stage in time. But let me tell you, the policies which have been unleashed post and some tweaked after the Indian semiconductor policy in December 2021 are the best in their class in the world. And a lot of people I see are a lot of naysayers also saying that if the government is giving you 50% and it's pari passu and the state government gives you 25%, then what are you doing and all of that? Please understand that if you take a cross section of the entire world, starting from Taiwan to China, wherever you want to do, the entire story has been set up with public money. because that's the way it is. It's a humongous investment with a large scale of failure, right? So that's the way it is, and that's how it goes. So starting from there, from Keynes, we have Sanjay, who's been with NXP. NXP is a world leader. It's a Dutch world leader, and he's been the CEO of NXP in India, and now he heads Spark Minda. How do you feel, Sanjay? How's the automotive sector? How does it look in the next 10 years with the progress what India is doing now?
So carrying, what was discussed earlier, I personally believe that automotive sector is going to be one of the key drivers for growth of semiconductors industries from India. And leading to what I said earlier, I will give you a very simple example. Today, one of the basic device that is going to come into Indian two-wheelers, three-wheelers, and four-wheelers is a device called TPMS, Tire Pressure Monitoring System. I personally worked on this device chip that goes inside it in 2004-5 time frame, right? Almost 20 years back.
Oh.
So this technology, of course, came to US and then Europe first, and now India is catching up. Example that if you plan to do this TPMS as a Indian tier 1 company like Spark Minda, the 60-70% of the cost is taken by one chip from one global MNC. And we approached a few Indian companies, the startups, which are actually have a tipping point to take off. These are the simplest of the chips that were designed 20 years back, right? So to do those chips, it does not cost much, and 1/3 cost you can produce that chip in India, even as a fabless design. What it would mean that a company in India can beat any global company on the overall price, maintaining or improving the quality, hands down, if we have the Indian company. And I will be I'm very happy to say that we actually contracted an Indian startup, literally, submarine mission, and we gave that contract to that company.
Wonderful.
And within a year's time, we are going to give a run for money for many global MNCs which sell that chip, and they're not ready to reduce their price in India for their maybe lack of insights. But this will prove in a year's time what Indian companies can do. And you need to break one glass ceiling. As there are many examples, this 100-meter race example, that unless first guy broke this 10-second target, nobody thought it is humanly possible. And after first guy, there were 1,000 guys next 1 year. Same way, nobody thought in one-day cricket you can create a double century unless Virender Sehwag did it. And then there were 8 centuries within 12 months.
Correct.
That will be the deja vu moment for companies from India, that we can give run for money to build the Make in India chip for India and for the world. So I'm extremely hopeful for that moment.
Great. Thanks, Sanjay. And at the end of the day, what Sanjay just mentioned, that famous 10-second barriers, we must understand when Maruti came to India, automobile sector was zero. Look at where it is today. It was never known that the automobile sector will turn out like this. Let me not go into automobiles. Let me look into Texas Instruments. They came here in India in 1985. There's that famous picture of theirs, that first machine coming on that bullock cart. Did they come and think that, after around 35, 40 years, you'll produce the 21st% of the world's design? No. So these things will happen the way exactly what Sanjay has said. I will not ask you, Chetna, you will have the last word. The lady will always have the last word. Let me come back again to Vivek, and let me ask him a very, let me not use that word controversial, but a quasi-controversial question. Not to be quoted to ARM or anybody else. Your views on RISC-V.
You are saying it's not a controversial question, so I'll try to answer in a open way, because I deal with a lot of different parts of the ecosystem. So RISC-V is an open source. right? And open source has been embraced by several different countries for different aspects of, or even in the US. I mean, several companies have been using it for different reasons perspective, right? Now, what you have to also understand that the ARM or x86 in their own segments have also got a very, very rich software ecosystem around them as well, which makes it much faster for those companies for specific certain applications, fast track of getting to the market, right? At the cost of certain other aspects of it, which is basically could be certain power envelopes or could be certain aspects of just the cost structures itself, right? Now, one thing I do want to talk about, given the RISC-V is an open source, so there's no initial cost to do anything to start from learning aspects of this, because if you work with an ARM or x86 or anything else, you need to be able to get certain kits and certain aspects of technology before you can start anything. So that's one part of it. The Sunny I think talked about, Sanjay talked about very interesting part. When I did my first semiconductor company in North America almost 20 years ago, we only had six hardware engineers and almost like 40 to 50 software engineers. And what is happening since then now is that the companies like ARM, for example, they're starting to not just start provide the cores, which is the CPUs, but also the subsystems around it as well. And I'm sure the RISC-V is also going to do the same thing, right? And which basically means that now when you're designing a chip, what your job is to take different types of these subsystems and do the right interconnects with the right process nodes. I think we didn't talk about the process nodes part of it. It's a very important part of it, because when you're looking at 28 nanometer process nodes or even 22 nanometer global foundries, for example, or around those, they are becoming much more matured process nodes, right? Look at the latest, please don't quote me, I think it's the Apple phone is 5 nanometer, if I remember correctly, right? Which is a very advanced process node from TSMC. It's very difficult to produce something like that, and it's based on ARM CPUs, and they have their own custom ARM CPUs actually, which they call ARM instruction set licenses. So I think it's talking about whether you start with RISC-V, you start with ARM, you start with x86. I think mostly in India, I would say either ARM or RISC-V, because x86 is driven by Intel or AMD. Nobody else has a instruction set license to do it, at least to my knowledge today, unless somebody is hidden in India, I do not know. So it's going to become a more like a Lego block approach. You understand the things, different areas. How do you integrate very quickly?
Correct.
Coming back to the fabless versus the fab part of it, I think Sanjay or Sunny also talked about the same thing. Is that when you look at the fabless, most of the companies in North America or other parts of the world are fabless. They don't have their own fabs, and I think Intel is the one which has its own fab, and also the business models are changing. So you don't need to have your own fab. So you have to, if you take the design part separate and you take the manufacturing part separate, there are different skills required for that. And the design is the most intellectual part of the creation of these things with the right nanometer technology, process nodes technologies, and so on and so forth. I hope I answered the question in non-controversial.
Perfect. Thanks for that. So, Chetna, you should have the last word before we get on to concluding remarks from all of you. And, even Vivek brought out the power of collaborations, the power of collaborative effort. Can you share some success stories or examples of, collaborative ventures which have significantly, given a large impetus to the growth and progress in India? The power of collaborative ventures, and especially as president of El Camino, there's nobody else who can give this than you. And you have the last word.
Okay. Yes. So when you talk about semiconductor, it's a top of technology. Use PCB is still, we can still manage, but semiconductor, unless you have the knowledge, you cannot. So even to set up a clean room, it requires a different, mindset to think, oh, this is a class 100 or 1,000 or 10,000. 10,000 is still okay. But when it comes to 10, it's a very different story. So definitely when we see India, so I would say that a technology, when they say, oh, can India do it? I would say attract the investors or the partners to come to India to be at the high end of technology. So for that, we have to be ready, right? And not just we already are ready with the resources, the designing part of it, what all the panelists talked about. I would also talk about the knowledge of equipment. Is there, the process is there, the training aspect of it is already there in the market, right? And also the complete know-how, like if I'm talking about the packaging line, 5 generations of the packaging bonding is already, which was developed in 40 years, it's already available in the industry. India has to be ready to pick it up and start doing it. That's the thing. So this will also help the world. Like when we world is looking at China plus one phenomena, this is the opportunity, window of opportunity for all of us, for India, to see how we can be supporting in de-risking the supply chain. Also, how we can have collaboration. So one success story, as Anurag, so I would say that it started with just a line diagram in India, okay? And this was a very complex design as per, and nobody in India had thought about. So it's about a government company, and there was one person who had the vision of automatic lines. I would say the credit goes to his vision, which others in the government company would never say, no, India with the manual process can do it. But this person had the vision that, no, I need no human touch, And then we had a supplier from America who said, yes. There was a discussion which went for almost 1 year on the process, how it has to be developed. Of course, application engineers were involved in everything. It became a big success story. And this is first of its kind in India and second in the world after US. So this, yes, India has the potential to do it. We can do it. We have to just look around and say, yes, we are there and be ready. And the turnaround time should be fast because to grasp the market share, what we want today.
Thanks. That's the last point. Turnaround time to grasp the market. That is the crux. So I'm spot on time. I will always stay on time. So concluding remarks, 2 minutes each. We'll start with Sunny from one end. Any concluding remarks? Exactly 2 minutes.
Okay, guys. Actually, this is as Modi ji said in the Semicon India, yahi waqt hai, sahi waqt hai. I'm a strong supporter of that thought. In fact, I sometimes talk to MBA students and I tell them that I envy you guys because when we were starting our engineering 40 years ago, nothing was available. I had a card reader in Delhi College of Engineering. We didn't have PC, came much after that. So you guys have that, right environment, the right industry standards to really make India successful. Think about the country also. Today, from our age group, a lot of people are coming back to India. Earlier years, they were going out of India. So this is the time when you need to focus on your career in India and think about the country, think nationalist, and think at the same time about your own career. Semiconductor will give you a lot greater returns in the longer term than IT would. I can risk saying that. IT would give you short-term immediate salaries, but Semicon, if you develop your expertise in 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, you will become irreplaceable and very valuable. Thank you.
Thanks. Sanjay. Irreplaceable. Please remember this word.
So maybe taking segue from Sunny. So I recently went to a holy trip and there was a place called Prayagraj. So, you have the ritual that if you take a bath there, so all your sins goes away and you are reaching the next state. So I would say that Triveni Sangam today, India's time, with the three key entities which are actually enabling for youth of the country. It is government. It has never been so bright before. It has never been so inspirational before. Today, when we talk to a government colleague and a friend in a MIT or a DST, 10:30 in the night they are working, and it gives a hard competition to people in industry. So that is the first one. Second one is the academia. It has never been so passionate where every single of our institutes want to do something big. And we want to actually compete with the best of the world, and at least we are aspirational, and that is what will take us there. And the third one is actually the entire Indian industry, which consisting of startups, MSMEs, who have big dreams. And I genuinely believe that this Triveni Sangam is very unique time, and that is what it links to what my dear friend said, that he samay hai, sahi samay hai. So wish you all the best. Thank you.
Thanks, Satan. Chetna?
Okay, so I would say that I used to interview people 25 years back, and so I'm talking about the electronic engineer. Okay, we would ask what is a wafer. He would read it as a water. Okay, and 25 years, even now they talk that I don't want that. So where we go, at least people should know what is a wafer, and people should know what is the process. This awareness has to be there. We have to make India grow. Abhi waqt hai, sahi abhi hai.
Great.
So I would say the following, that the university, a lot of people, they believe they go to a university. I'm not going to make some controversial remark. Okay, they go to university, they get a certificate, they learn something and all that, right? Which is important. Okay, don't take me wrong. But I think it's also this in today's day and age, at least in the last 10 years, in fact, much more today, that you have a power of internet, which at least when I was going to my IIT, at those days, I did not have the power of internet. So I had to learn on my own what the book is available, I had to read it and do it in isolation. But the power of internet tells you that you don't have to a university or some academic institution to learn anything. Everything is available on the internet. Everything is possible to learn on their own, including the semiconductor designs, by the way. Everything is on your tip. Now, I can also say is that I also run a passion project of teaching entrepreneurship as a nonprofit. And one of the things which I tell, the mindset is the most important thing. Going for a job is an important aspect of it, but learning a skill and creating a new job is a much more exciting passion to do it. And I think we have a lot of entrepreneurs here who have done it. And that's one of the most important skills you will ever learn. You will fail sometimes. I failed my first company, I can tell you. 9/11 happened on that day. But it is definitely possible to learn all those things. And artificial intelligence nobody will teach you in a school. You will have to learn it by osmosis and by experience with what other companies are doing in this space. That's just my 2 cents. And future is very bright, actually. You don't have to go through if a manufacturing doesn't happen here. The design has the most 70% of the skill set which goes into it.
Arnab, yeah, I think we talked a lot. I think all the panelists talked about a lot about the need for doing it, the opportunity for doing it. Now, I think I also want to spend a little bit of time on maybe 30 seconds on the specifics which you asked.
Sure.
For those of you who want to get into it and thinking, okay, all this is there, so what do I go about designing? There are experts from the automotive sector are there. As far as my industry is concerned, I can tell you a lot of thought process has gone into it. There has been a chipset task force, right, which you're aware of.
Absolutely.
Which had made a recommendation to the government to say these are the chipsets that India needs for the networking telecommunication infrastructure, and what are the chipset developments to fund. Okay, and the categories which were identified both in the customer premises equipment as well as the network infrastructure equipment. For those of you who are looking for ideas on what chips to develop, please look up the DOT website. You will see the recommendations of the chipset task force group. I encourage some of you just pick up items from there. I'm just reading from there, which talks about XPON, optical line terminating equipment chipsets. We're talking about digital signal processors for radio and processing. We're talking about L2, 3 packet switching devices. So a whole bunch of lists are there, which are like a priority as what the industry has thought of, that indigenous development can help. So if you're willing to jump and get into the fray right now, even don't have to think too much about what to do. I think a lot of the thought process has gone in. So all the best. I really expect to see a couple of years later at the same conferences celebrating the success of a few semiconductor startups. Thank you.
Great. So as old habits die hard, my time on target is absolutely right. We have exactly 4 minutes for 2 questions. If anybody would want to ask any question, the floor is open. Yes, please, madam. First, your name, what do you do, and to whom?
Since I'm the Japanese ecosystem, having worked with Toyota for several years, I don't know the specifics of this particular agreement, but what I do know is that we are working very closely with the various there's a semiconductor association in Japan, there's a chemical association in Japan, and we have been part of the Toyota Susho group, which is one of the largest trading companies in the world, nearly $80 billion, and chemicals is a very strong subject there. So what the aim is twofold. One, bring up the technology of the Indian companies through JVs and technical collaborations to world-class levels, to semiconductor class levels, and then make that an export hub, reverse exports, right, from India to the world. And the second aspect for now, that may take 2-3 years, for now would be to bring these products from Japan and overseas to India to enable the Indian ecosystem. So it's a twofold, two-step kind of thing. Initially, just trading, and step 2 would be technical collaborations and production in India. Anybody else like to add on?
Dia, just to add on to what Sunny said, firstly, a very good question, and I'm happy that somebody from Invest India has asked this question. Let me also tell you, in the coming next week, or possibly I would not give you any timeline because it is being settled. The first round of negotiations and first round of basic understanding of the MOU between the Indian side and the Japanese side will take place. MATI is working on it, and we are a part of it. Sanjay is going to be presenting that very soon. So there's work in progress. Something will come out of it. But a nice question. One last question, if there's anybody. Otherwise, yes, sir. A very small one, sir. You have precisely 30 seconds. Okay.
Especially the question.
Okay, so this is a good option because we do not have many experts. So veterans are always welcome, and they can always have a expert, opinions and the lectures given. So yes, they would be definitely part of the ecosystem, whatever the programs we develop. We welcome this. This would be good.
To add on to this, there's a lot of thought which is being given to this. There's a skill development committee which was just finished a report which was headed by Jaya Jagdish of AMD. And there's a lot of work in progress insofar as this is concerned with the AICTE as well. So this is going to be a very close thing which is going to be happening very fast because there's no other option. Where do you get the faculty from? How do you train the trainer? That's a very, very valid question.
And maybe very relevant point to add here. This has been talk of the town for how we can enable it, and we can learn something from Europe ecosystem. So in Holland, there is a system of dual employment. So selected people can be co-employed at the same time by industry as well as by academia. And I think this is one success model that we were working on.
Correct.
So that, you don't need to have two hats artificially. You are naturally part of the, two side of the system, the help in translating each other's problems and bridge the gap.
All that remains for me now is to say thank you to all the panelists. Thank you so much for all your wisdom. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your time. And I'll just give a small little memento from IMC, which I've been told to give so. And Arnab has a meeting, which he has to rush for. There you go, Arnab.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. Thanks. There you go, Chetna. Thanks. Thank you. Thanks, Sanjay. Thanks. Thank you, Sunny.
Thank you.
Thanks. मुझे भी देना है?
Yes, sir. So the most important person who asked a lot of questions.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Satan. Yeah. Yeah, surely. Come. Along with that. एक इससे भी खींच देना, please. Can I take out this? अच्छा, thank you. Thanks, Satan. Thank you very much.